it was a very difficult chore to get this film. So what drove you? Passion, curiosity, the need to make a statement about the situation of whales, and yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting movie, I think. So
Thank you. I think it was all those things, to be honest with you. Plus, nobody goes on quests anymore. And it wasn't just the idea of going on a quest, but quests are hard. They take a long time, and they're serious. And so I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, but I think that's what also made it so much fun. I wish it didn't take 10 years, but at the same time, it was just I look on it now as such an emotional experience, trying to find this one damn whale.
for yeah, 52. But tell us a little. Tell us in few words what is the film about, so I can use your narration to illustrate the story with your
Well,
voice.
sure, the film is about what's called the 52 hertz whale, the loneliest whale in the world, a whale that scientists first heard on a number of classified hydrophones in the oceans. They heard this mysterious sound, that of a 52 hertz sound in the ocean. Nobody knew if it was a submarine or what it was. After a number of years, one scientist, a guy by the name of Dr. Watkins, discovered that the sound was coming from a whale. Nobody quite believed him, and nobody had seen this creature, and they weren't quite sure. They didn't know if he was the first of his kind, the last of his kind, or a hybrid. Since that time, people have kind of assigned or anthropomorphized, as we do, these prescribed emotions to this whale, that of the loneliest whale in the world. And when people started to hear the story of a whale that swam through the oceans calling out at a signal that was different from any other whale, calling out and theoretically never once receiving a response, I think that spoke to a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and it became this meme that kind of again traveled around the oceans and around the world, picked up by bands like BTS. And this whale just spoke to so many people. I had heard the story. I had gone through a breakup. I was, of course, lonely. And so I had an immediate connection. And then I would tell other people, I would say, hey, have you heard the story of this whale that swims the ocean, calling out, speaking at a frequency that no other whale could understand? And people would, when I would tell them the story, they would grab onto my arm and they would say, oh my God, really? Or their face would go white, or they would start to cry. And I'm a filmmaker, I'm a storyteller. And I have never gotten a response to a story that I've pitched than that of this animal, this creature. And so that led me down this path. I wanted to know why we as human beings responded so strongly to the story of this lonely whale. And, of course, it's man's existential human crisis. We're looking at in the mirror, but it was so much more than that. It was the fact that it was a whale and all the unbelievable history and the spirituality and the connections that we have with these majestic and huge creatures. That's what kind of led me to this story and realizing there was so much more to tell. But then I found the science to be fascinating. And then the idea of going on an expedition was even more fascinating.
What could you tell us about what you found out about? What did you find out about this unique whale in her situation? And also, it's strange that we can perceive her frequency, so humans can hear her, but we
Uh,
confuse her
well,
with
it's
an
a hymn.
instrument
Number
of
one, it's a
war.
hymn. Yeah, yeah, it's a hymn. It's a hymn.
Right.
Um, but repeat your
Sorry,
question.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Repeat your question if you don't mind.
No, I think it's interesting for me that we can hear his frequency. He can communicate with humans, but we thought that he was like a military arm or a threat or something. And but she's a female. But yeah, sorry. And so, what did you discover about this? Is she a handicap, or why is it for this whale impossible to communicate with other whales? I
Right.
know the
Well,
frequency problem, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, most low frequency whales, whales that are this far out in the ocean, are usually what's called low frequency whales. They're blue whales and fin whales, gray whales, and they're speaking at a frequency. Sorry, blue whales and fin whales. They're speaking at 15 to kind of 25 hertz usually, and then humpbacks, which are never that far out in the ocean, are usually much higher. And so, for a while there, they thought it was a submarine, and this guy's like, no, 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 it's a whale, and basically, we don't know why it speaks at this frequency. Is it the first of its kind? Is it the last of its kind, or is it a hybrid? Or they thought maybe it had some malformation in its call. Maybe it was just speaking, voicing at a different frequency. We didn't know why. There was some aberration, a mutation. So there were a whole bunch of reasons why this whale was speaking at a different frequency, if you will. And then the question is, well, what could other whales understand him? Could they hear him and not understand him? Could they hear him and could he understand them in return, almost like a deaf person?
So would you say that the loneliest whale is still a mystery?
Oh, very
Or
much so.
I thought so.
You know, we know more about it, but you know, when you look as a filmmaker and you go in and you explore these mysteries, people say, well, aren't you worried that you're going to totally take away the mystery? You never take away the mystery. You're only adding another chapter to a very long mystery of whales. There's so many mysteries in the ocean. There are so many mysteries about whales. We are just scratching the surface when it comes to understanding what these whales are really saying, how they're communicating, in ways in which they're communicating and socializing. They could be socializing in ways that are far more enriched than we could ever understand or know. They could be communicating in ways that we have no idea. I mean, you're talking about creatures that use sound, and brains are so smart, they're mapping the ocean floor in 4D as they're swimming across. So you have no idea how intelligent they could be or how emotional they could be.
So, Josh, do you think that our terrible way of, well, the human relation to nature is so abusive? We have destroyed the oceans, and do you think we have changed that had a negative impact in whales, let's say, in their ecosystem, their world, their lives, the way they communicate, reproduce, love?
It's a good question, and it's a complicated question. It's not like we're hunting whales like we used to. Okay, so whale stocks are coming back. Whales are returning to stocks that we've never seen before. That's a beautiful and wonderful thing. At the same time, here we are using the ocean, and we are creating man-made noise that we are injecting into the oceans, and therefore we're not directly killing whales, but we're preventing them through noise from mating, feeding, and socializing. So it's a different type of death, if you will. One that's far more ironic and sublime. And there's the rub, if you will. We're not barbarians, but we're still killers. Doing it softly or loudly in this case. And so we all like to think that we are becoming a far more rational, caring world. But in some respects, that's not 100% true. So I think it's continuing to educate ourselves. From a child to an elderly person could understand that shooting a harpoon into a whale is barbaric. But this is a slightly different method of, us killing whales. And so I think that that's really important for us to note. I think the other note for us, and why it's so important, and stories like this are so important, is because when you realize how interconnected we are with whales, with the history of whales, and with the ocean, then you realize that the only way to save the world is not like through us alone in a sense. Like if you realize, if you understand how interconnected the world is, even in the idea of ocean noise pollution, then you must know the full scope of what we have to do to save it.
Okay, my last question, Josh. What was the biggest, no, yeah, what was the biggest satisfaction that you got out of this adventure searching for the loneliest?
Satisfaction?
Yeah, as a filmmaker or as a storyteller or as a person who cares about whales and animals and nature and the planet. I
The
don't know.
biggest thing I got out of this story had nothing to do with storytelling or caring about the ocean. The biggest thing I got out of this story was I learned to be a more caring human being in my everyday life
Towards other human beings or in general towards,
towards other human beings. Towards other human beings. A whale helped me be a better human being to other human beings.
how so? Explain a little.
Because I had never spoken to other human beings about their loneliness. I had never spoken to other human beings about what it means to be alone or things that they care about or their empathy for these creatures and these things. And so I learned empathy. And that made me a better human being. Empathy doesn't necessarily make you a better storyteller. Yes, kind of it does, but like the real thing was is like my relationships were better because I listened to people.